Welcome back, everyone. Buckle up, because today's deep dive is going to be a wild ride. We're tackling Germany's road to World War One.
Ooh, yeah, that's a big one.
It is. But we've got a mountain of historical analysis here. We're going to go way deeper than the usual stuff.
Awesome. Looking forward to it.
Get ready for some serious aha moments.
It's amazing how Germany, like in the decades before the Great War, it's almost a perfect example of how a country's anxieties can shape, their actions on the world stage.
Okay, so let's set the stage. Germany in 1871, right? They've just unified. They've gone from this collection of separate states to, boom, a major European power. Quite a transformation.
It was remarkable, really, if you think about it. By the early 1900s, they were outproducing even Britain in steel.
Whoa, wait, surpassing Britain?
Yeah, Britain, the industrial giant.
Wow. I bet that didn't sit well with some folks over there. But even with all this success, Germany wasn't exactly feeling secure, right?
Yeah.
I mean, geographically, they're smack dab in the middle of Europe. That's got to make you a little nervous now.
Exactly. It's like, imagine you're the new kid on the block, right?
Yeah.
And suddenly you're the strongest one there, but you're surrounded by, people who used to push you around. It's a tough spot to be in.
Yeah, for sure. And they were dealing with some serious history too, right? France on one side, still kind of sore from losing the Franco-Prussian War.
Mm-hmm.
And then you have Russia, a massive power, just looming over there to the east.
That's right. And that all led to this deep-seated fear, this fear of encirclement. It's this constant worry about being surrounded by hostile forces.
So every time they tried to, make themselves safer, it just made everyone else more nervous.
Exactly.
Classic security dilemma.
It really is. And then, boom, 1907. The Triple Entente pops up. Britain, France, and Russia. Talk about feeling ganged up on.
No kidding. That must have felt like a slap in the face to Germany.
It was a huge turning point. They saw it as, like, their worst fears coming true. It pushed them towards a more assertive approach.
More assertive, even aggressive, maybe?
Yeah, for sure.
Okay, so then we have Kaiser Wilhelm II coming onto the scene. This guy was all about making Germany a global superpower.
Oh, yeah.
Weltpolitik, they called it. World policy. Basically, go big or go home.
Wilhelm II he was a complicated figure. Very ambitious, very impulsive. And he totally believed in Germany's destiny to be, a major world power, colonies, a huge navy to rival Britain's, the whole shebang.
And that ambition led to some pretty bold moves. Like, remember those Navy laws Germany passed in 1898 and 1900?
Oh, yeah.
It was like Germany was saying, hey, Britain, we're coming for your crown. Get ready.
Challenging Britain's Navy like that, it was a big deal. The British, they built their whole empire on their control of the seas.
Yeah.
So seeing Germany trying to, muscle in on their turf, it created a lot of tension.
It wasn't just about ships, was it? It was this clash of egos, this battle for global prestige, two nations, both seeing themselves as the rightful leaders of the world. And that rarely ends peacefully, does it?
Not usually, no.
So you've got this brewing rivalry between Germany and Britain. And then on top of that, Germany jumps into these Moroccan crises in the early 1900s. What was that all about?
Well, Morocco was seen as like a real prize back then. France had their eyes on it, and Germany saw an opportunity to assert themselves, maybe even grab a colony.
So in 1905 and 1906, we have the first Moroccan crisis. It's like Germany shows up uninvited to France's party in Morocco.
Yeah, not the smoothest move, diplomatically speaking. Germany ends up pretty isolated, and it actually pushes France and Britain even closer together.
But they didn't learn their lesson, did they? Fast forward to 1911, second Moroccan crisis. This time, Germany sends a gunboat to Agadir, like, just letting you know, we're here. Talk about saber rattling.
It was a very provocative move,
Right.
raised tensions with both France and Britain. It just reinforced this image of Germany as the aggressor, like the bully.
And all this time, Germany's tied to Austria-Hungary through the dual alliance. An alliance that was supposed to offer security, but, it didn't quite work out that way, did it?
No, the dual alliance, formed in 1879, it was meant to counter Russia. But the thing is, Austria-Hungary, they were a declining empire. Lots of internal problems, especially in the Balkans. And those problems, they were about to become everyone's problems.
Because the Balkans were like a powder keg, right? All these different ethnic groups and nationalist movements all vying for power after the decline of the Ottoman Empire.
Absolutely. It was a super volatile region, and Austria-Hungary, with their ambitions in the region, were right in the thick of it.
And Germany's just there, backing them up no matter what. Talk about loyalty. Or maybe not thinking things through.
They saw a stable Austria-Hungary as key to their own security. But that unwavering support, even when Austria-Hungary was, let's be honest, in the wrong, it made Germany look reckless, a threat to peace in Europe.
So you've got this web of alliances, this powder keg in the Balkans, and Germany feeling increasingly isolated and anxious. Not exactly a recipe for peace and tranquility, is it?
No, not at all. It's like all the ingredients for a major conflict were already in the pot, simmering away, just waiting for one spark to set the whole thing off.
And that spark, as we know, would come in the form of an assassination.
The assassination of Archduke Franz Ferdinand in Sarajevo, 1914, it was a tragedy, really. A tragedy that would set in motion this chain of events that would, well, plunge Europe and then the world into war.
Okay, so we're back, and things are about to get even more intense. We've been talking about Germany's rise to power, their anxieties, their ambitions, but let's zoom in on some of those forces inside Germany, the things that were really pushing them toward this aggressive stance.
One thing that really jumps out at me from these sources is this, rising influence of militarism in German society. It wasn't just about having a big army. It was, a whole mindset.
Okay, yeah, unpack that a little. What exactly do we mean by a militaristic mindset?
Well, think of it this way. In a militaristic society, the military isn't just one institution among many. It's seen as this ultimate symbol of national strength, the embodiment of the nation's values.
So it's almost like this cultural obsession with military power.
Yeah, exactly. And that obsession, it kind of seeps into everything. Politics, education, even everyday social interactions.
Yeah.
The military becomes like the gold standard, the model for how things should be done.
And how did that play out in Germany leading up to World War I?
Well, for one thing, it meant that military solutions were often seen as the best solutions, even for problems that, maybe could have been solved through diplomacy.
So instead of talking things out, they were more likely to reach for the saber.
Yeah, you could say that. And this wasn't just the thinking of a few generals. It was a widespread belief. A lot of the German elite and even ordinary citizens felt this way.
So we've got militarism on the rise. What else is going on in Germany that might have nudged them closer to war?
Well, we can't ignore the economic side of things, right?
Yeah.
Germany was this industrial powerhouse churning out all these goods, but they needed resources to keep that going, and they needed markets to sell those goods to.
Ah, okay, so this is where that economic rivalry with Britain comes back into play.
Exactly. Germany's economic ambitions put them in direct competition with Britain, especially when it came to colonies and access to global markets. Remember how you talked about Germany outproducing Britain in steel? That wasn't just an economic fact, right? It was a sign that the balance of power was shifting. And that made the British nervous, really nervous.
So we've got this mix of economic ambition, national pride, military might. It's starting to feel like a pretty volatile situation, like someone's about to, light a match.
And then you add in that third ingredient, right? Nationalism. Germany was a brand new nation. They were unified, eager to assert their place in the world. And this wasn't just about, patriotic pride. For a lot of people, it was this belief in Germany's, inherent superiority. Their right to dominate.
So it's like this perfect storm of internal pressures, militarism, economic competition, and this intense, almost aggressive nationalism.
Yeah, and these pressures weren't just happening on their own. They were interacting with this really complex, intense international situation.
Right. The alliance system, the powder keg in the Balkans. But what about the role of other European powers? Did they do anything to, escalate things?
Absolutely. Well, Germany definitely played a big part in the events leading up to the war. Other powers share some responsibility, too.
For instance, France, after losing the Franco-Prussian War, they were wary of Germany. Understandably so, right? They wanted to get back their lost territory, Alsace-Lorraine, and they were looking for allies to help them do that.
And Russia, with their massive territory and ambitions in the Balkans, they saw Germany's influence in the region as a direct threat. Plus, they were allied with Serbia, which made things even more complicated.
So you've got all these competing interests, simmering resentments, long-standing anxieties, and then you throw in this alliance system, which was supposed to prevent war, but actually ended up making it more likely.
It was supposed to deter aggression, yeah, create this balance of power, but instead it created this rigid system of obligations that, well, they pulled nations into conflicts they might have avoided otherwise.
It's like a giant game of Jenga, You pull out one block and suddenly, boom, the whole tower's at risk of collapsing.
That's a great way to put it. And that's basically what happened in 1914.
Because when Austria-Hungary declared war on Serbia after the assassination, Germany felt obligated to back them up, even though they knew it could lead to a wider war.
And Russia, they were obligated to defend Serbia because of their alliance. And then France, allied with Russia, they got pulled in too.
So this local conflict in the Balkans, it just exploded into a full-blown European war and then a world war.
And the tragic thing is, it could have been avoided. There were so many points where diplomacy could have worked, where cooler heads could have prevailed.
But those cooler heads were in short supply in the summer of 1914.
Exactly. The pressures, the fears, the ambitions, the miscalculations, it all just combined to create the situation where war seems almost inevitable.
Okay, so we've talked about those internal pressures within Germany, the role of other European powers, and the dangerous dynamics of the alliance system. But what about the role of individuals? Did specific leaders and their decisions really play a big part in the outbreak of war?
Oh, absolutely. While those big historical forces were definitely shaping the context, the decisions made by individual leaders, their personalities, their ambitions, their mistakes, those were crucial in pushing Europe over the edge.
Like Kaiser Wilhelm II, his impulsive nature, his belief in German power, he played a key role in shaping Germany's aggressive foreign policy. He's the one who pushed for that bigger navy, who challenged Britain, who backed Austria-Hungary without question.
His decision to give Austria-Hungary that blank check was a pivotal moment. It basically gave them free rein to deal with Serbia however they wanted, knowing Germany would support them.
Hold on, what was this blank check exactly?
Well, it wasn't a real check, obviously. It was more like a diplomatic promise.
Yeah.
After the assassination, Austria-Hungary was understandably upset. They wanted to punish Serbia, but they were worried about how Russia would react. So they turned to Germany for support.
And Wilhelm, eager to show off Germany's power and loyalty, basically said, "Go for it, we've got your back."
Exactly. And in a lot of ways, that sealed the fate of Europe. Austria-Hungary felt emboldened by Germany's unconditional support. They issued this harsh ultimatum to Serbia, knowing that if Serbia refused, it would mean war. And they were pretty sure Serbia would refuse, which would give them the excuse they needed to attack.
So Wilhelm's blank check, it was like a green light for war.
You could definitely see it that way. It gave Austria-Hungary the confidence to take a hard line, knowing they had the most powerful nation in Europe on their side.
Okay, so we have the blank check. Austria-Hungary issues the ultimatum. Serbia says no. Then what? How do we go from this local conflict to a full-blown world war?
Well, as soon as Austria-Hungary declared war on Serbia, Russia mobilized its troops to support Serbia because of their alliance.
And this is where those dominoes really start falling, right?
Exactly. Germany saw Russia mobilizing, and they felt threatened. And they also felt obligated to support Austria-Hungary, so they declared war on Russia.
And since France was allied with Russia, they had to join the war too.
And to avoid fighting a war on two fronts, Germany decided to use the Schlieffen Plan. It was this preemptive military strategy, basically a plan to quickly invade neutral Belgium so that they could knock France out of the war before Russia was fully ready.
Wait, so Germany invaded a neutral country? That seems like a pretty bad move strategically and morally.
It was very controversial, and it ended up backfiring. The invasion of Belgium outraged a lot of people internationally, and it brought Britain into the war on the side of France and Russia.
Because Britain had promised to defend Belgium's neutrality.
Exactly. So this regional conflict between Austria-Hungary and Serbia quickly became a global war, pulling in all the major powers of Europe.
And it all happened so fast. It's amazing how quickly things spiraled out of control.
It really shows how interconnected the European powers were at the time. Their fates were so tied together that this seemingly small conflict in a relatively unknown part of the world could trigger this massive chain reaction that would set the whole continent on fire.
I think we need to take a breather here for a sec. Let all this sink in. We've covered a lot. The pressures inside Germany, how alliances played out, and how decisions made by certain leaders really had a huge impact. But we're not done yet.
There's still so much to explore, like the bigger implications of World War I and the lessons we can learn from this tragic chapter in history.
Okay, so we're back, and wow, I don't know about you, but I am feeling the weight of history here. We've been talking about Germany's road to World War I, and it's definitely not a simple story.
It's messy, right? Full of twists and turns.
Totally. It's like you have this new nation, right? Unified, powerful, full of ambition, but they're also dealing with all this insecurity and anxiety.
It's like they had all this power, but didn't quite know what to do with it.
Yeah, like they won a Ferrari in a raffle, but had zero driving experience.
Exactly. And then when they tried to show off to kind of prove themselves, it just backfired. It made other nations nervous and pushed them further into that corner that Germany was so desperate to get out of.
It's that security dilemma again, isn't it?
Yep. The more they tried to make themselves safe, the less safe they actually became.
So knowing what we know now, could they have avoided the war? Was there something else Germany could have done, maybe a different path they could have taken?
Ah, that's the million-dollar question, right?
Yeah.
Historians have been debating that for ages. There were definitely some missed opportunities along the way, times when, maybe diplomacy could have worked. But hindsight is 20/20, right?
It's like one of those slow motion train wrecks, you know? You
Yeah.
see it happening, but you can't do anything to stop it.
And in this case, the train had been picking up speed for a while. The arms race, the competition for resources, the nationalism, the alliances, it all just created this perfect storm.
And then you've got individual leaders, each making their own choices, some impulsive, some calculated. But all those decisions had consequences, consequences that went way beyond what anyone intended.
Right, like the Wilhelm's blank check. That was a huge turning point. He basically gave Austria-Hungary the okay to start a war.
And once that first shot was fired, boom, the alliance system kicked in. It pulled all these nations into the fight, even if they didn't want to be there. Like a domino effect, you know?
Exactly. It's this stark reminder that even in a world where, countries are talking to each other, where they're trying to work things out, even then, one person's choices can have these huge unintended consequences.
So after all this, what are some of the big takeaways? What can we learn from Germany's experience from this whole, tragic situation?
Well, for me, one of the big lessons is just how dangerous unchecked nationalism can be. When national pride and this feeling of superiority, when those things run wild, you get this us versus them mentality. And that makes it almost impossible to find common ground or, work together.
And we see how a culture that's all about the military, that glorifies military power, how that can really mess up a nation's priorities. It makes war seem like the only answer, even when there might be other
Yeah,
solutions.
and we can't forget about those alliances. They were supposed to, prevent war, right? But they actually ended up making it more likely because they locked everyone into these rigid agreements.
It's ironic, isn't it? The things they created to keep the peace ended up helping to start a war.
That's the thing about power and security. Trying to make yourself safe can sometimes make everyone less safe.
Okay, so all this was a long time ago, but what does it all mean for us today? What can we learn from these, mistakes from the past?
I think the most important thing is to be aware. To really think critically about the world around us, we need to recognize the dangers of, nationalist rhetoric, the dangers of glorifying military power. We need to be aware of our own biases, because they can really distort how we see things.
We also have to remember that history is complicated. There's always more than one side to the story, lots of factors at play, and the choices we make, both as individuals and as, as a society, those choices have consequences. Consequences we might not even be able to predict.
It's like diplomacy, real dialogue,
Mm.
a willingness to, truly understand other points of view. Those things are essential to preventing conflict.
This deep dive has been a real eye-opener. It's definitely given me a lot to think about, especially about how we deal with all the complex stuff happening in the world today.
I hope our listeners feel the same way. Keep learning, keep asking questions. Remember, the past isn't just something we study. It's full of lessons that can help us build a better future.
Well said. And that's a wrap on our deep dive, but I hope this is just the start of your exploration of this period in history. It's fascinating stuff. So keep learning, keep those questions coming, and remember, the past can teach us a lot if we're willing to listen. Thanks for joining us. I